Think you know The Simpsons inside and out? Think again! There are subtle clues, shocking predictions, and ingenious critiques woven into every single episode that you've likely walked right past. Join me as we pull back the curtain on the secret brilliance of Springfield and discover the profound depths of this iconic show. Let's be honest, The Simpsons isn't just a cartoon. It's basically America's longest-running family therapy session disguised as yellow people with 4 fingers. Since its debut back in 1989, the show has been poking fun at politics, culture, technology, and basically anything else that dared to exist. You don't survive 3 decades of TV by just telling fart jokes, though let's not pretend fart jokes didn't help. The real reason The Simpsons has stuck around is because beneath the slapstick and catchphrases, the show has layers like onion-level layers. And if you peel back those layers, you'll find hidden messages that most people miss. The genius of Springfield lies in how timeless it feels. New generations keep discovering it, either through old reruns their parents left running on cable, or through streaming binges where someone swears, "I'll just watch one episode," and then looks up 5 hours later wondering why they're humming the monorail song. But here's the thing, The Simpsons doesn't just make you laugh, it sneaks little truths into your brain while you're distracted by Homer falling off a roof. That's why the show has managed to dominate pop culture for over 30 years. It's funny, yes, but it's also strangely wise. And let's not forget the weirdest part of its legacy, its predictions. Whole internet rabbit holes are dedicated to Simpsons predictions that came true. You've seen them. The Disney and Fox merger, smartwatches, autocorrect fails, and even US presidents. People have jokingly called the writers time travelers, but before we break out the tinfoil hats, let's look at why those predictions hit so hard. Because maybe, just maybe, it isn't magic. Maybe it's the writers noticing things most of us overlook. Take the Disney and Fox merger, for instance. Years before Mickey Mouse owned practically everything, The Simpsons had already joked about 20th Century Fox being a division of Walt Disney Co. At the time, it was just a throwaway gag, but the writers were paying attention to industry trends. Disney was gobbling up properties left and right, and Fox wasn't exactly the most financially stable empire in the world. Fast forward to 2019, and boom! Prediction fulfilled. Was this witchcraft? Probably not. More like razor-sharp satire disguised as silliness. Or let's talk about smartwatches. In the early 90s, the idea of talking to your wrist was something only James Bond or Dick Tracy did. Yet The Simpsons tossed in a gag showing characters using watch phones. Decades later, Apple unveiled the Apple Watch, and suddenly Homer was less of a buffoon and more of a prophet. Again, the writers were just observing how technology was advancing, cell phones were shrinking, computers were becoming personal, and society was inching closer to wearable tech. They connected the dots before the rest of us were paying attention. That's the meta-narrative here. The Simpsons doesn't actually predict the future, it just notices the present with laser precision. The jokes might seem ridiculous at the moment, but they're rooted in real societal trends. When reality finally catches up, we all scream, "They called it!" But what really happened is that the writers looked at where we were heading and exaggerated it for comedy. Then years later, the punchline became a headline. Of course, predictions are only part of the hidden magic. The real treasure lies in the subtler stuff, background gags, throwaway lines, blink and you'll miss its signs. This is where The Simpsons flexes its muscles and social commentary. Take consumerism, for example. Springfield is basically a caricature of American capitalism, where businesses exploit people at every turn. The Quickie Mart sells expired food, Krusty the Clown hawks every product imaginable, and Mr. Burns is a literal cartoon embodiment of corporate greed. But the real brilliance is in the small details. Look closely and you'll see price tags, advertisements, and background billboards mocking how shameless companies can be. A famous gag shows Krusty Burger promoting a new sandwich called a clogger, which looks like a heart attack on a bun. It's fun, but it's also a not-so-subtle jab at the fast food industry selling unhealthy products while pretending it's all in good fun. How about political satire? Oh, The Simpsons have been serving that since day one. Remember Mayor Quimby? He's essentially a caricature of every slimy politician who makes grand promises but delivers nothing. Then there's the classic episode, 2 cars in every garage and 3 eyes in every fish, where Mr. Burns runs for governor after his nuclear plant produces a 3-eyed fish. The episode aired in 1990, but it's still painfully relevant today. It was about money and politics, environmental negligence, and how easily voters can be manipulated. Swap out the names and dates, and you could apply it to modern headlines without missing a beat. Speaking of environmental issues, The Simpsons was sounding the alarm long before it was trendy. Springfield's river literally glows from toxic waste. The nuclear power plant leaks danger into the town, and Lisa spends half her life fighting for environmental justice. When you think about it, these aren't just cartoon jokes. They're warnings. The writers were spotlighting pollution, corporate irresponsibility, and climate change before most of us were even recycling. Back then, people laughed at the glowing fish. Today, we're debating how to survive global warming. But here's where things get even juicier. The show's use of art, literature, and symbolism. Yes, The Simpsons is packed with fart jokes, but it also sneaks in highbrow references most people never notice. Take the set designs. Springfield's art museum often features parodies of famous paintings, like Salvador Dali's Melting Clocks or Grant Wood's American Gothic. They're quick gags, but they also tie into the themes of the episodes. In one, Marge's paintings parodying Michelangelo's David sparked debates about censorship and art in society. It's silly, but also a smart way of making viewers think about bigger issues through humor. The show also loves literary allusions. There's an entire episode, A Streetcar Named Marge, that parodies Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire, while also poking fun at community theater. Then there's The Raven, an early episode where James Earl Jones narrates Edgar Allan Poe's famous poem with Homer as the tormented narrator. These aren't just Easter eggs. One of the most fascinating aspects is how deliberate those layers are. You might think, come on, they're just animators trying to make people laugh. True, but the writer's room for The Simpsons has always been stacked with people who have backgrounds in math, literature, politics, and philosophy. It's basically the Harvard of cartoon writing. So when they slip in a reference to something like Ayn Rand or a nod to the theory of relativity, it's not by accident. It's them having fun while also adding depth for anyone paying close attention. The show manages to speak to a kid who just wants to see Homer get hit with a rake, but at the same time to an adult who notices the satire about late-stage capitalism buried in a Krusty Burger commercial. Take the episode Bart Sells His Soul. On the surface, it's about Bart being mischievous and Milhouse being Milhouse. But underneath, it's a story about spirituality, morality, and whether we are defined by something intangible. That's a pretty heavy question for a half-hour cartoon. Or consider Homer Badman, where Homer is accused of harassment after misunderstanding involving a gummy Venus de Milo. The story is really about trial by media, the cancellation of culture before it had a name, and the dangers of sensationalism. These episodes hit harder today than they did back then because the hidden messages are timeless. Artistic references also deserve a deeper look. The show has used everything from Andy Warhol's pop art to Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey to emphasize its themes. In Homer 3, the episode where Homer disappears into a three-dimensional world, the visual design was inspired by early computer graphics but also carried undertones of escapism and modern alienation. Meanwhile, episodes like El Viaje Misterioso de Nuestro Homer, where Homer hallucinates after eating a chili pepper, double as both a surreal comedy and a trippy exploration of identity and purpose. Literary allusions often work the same way. When Lisa reads Leaves of Grass or quotes Simone de Beauvoir, it's not just a gag about her being an intellectual Simpson. It's a commentary on how serious voices often get drowned out in a noisy world. And the Treehouse of Horror specials, while filled with gore and absurdity, often parody classic literature like Dracula, The Shining, or The Telltale Heart. On one level, it's just fun to watch Homer try to survive as Jack Torrance. On another, it's an introduction for younger viewers to classic works of literature they might not encounter otherwise. The hidden message: pop culture and high culture aren't as separate as people think. They're constantly feeding each other. Recurring motifs in The Simpsons also carry meaning. Think about donuts. Yes, they're Homer's favorite food, but they also symbolize empty indulgence, a literal circle of desire that's never satisfied. Or take Bart's chalkboard gags at the very start of every episode. They're more than just a laugh. They reflect discipline, rebellion, and the constant cycle of punishment in Bart's life. Even Maggie's pacifier isn't just a prop. And this is why the show continues to resonate. Sure, people tune in for the jokes, but they stay because of the truths hiding beneath them. Every prediction that comes true feels like a confirmation that the writer saw something deeper in our world. Every satirical jab at politics or consumerism feels more relevant with time. Every artistic or literary reference reminds us that cartoons can be smarter than we give them credit for. This is what transforms The Simpsons from a piece of entertainment into what you could almost call an unseen masterpiece. The genius of that show is how natural everything feels. The writers don't sit you down and try to teach you a lesson. They don't act like teachers saying, "Today's topic is capitalism." Instead, they just make you laugh. And while you're laughing, they quietly slip in the message. You take it in without even noticing, which is why the show stays in your head long after it ends. You might think you're just remembering a funny moment like Homer shouting, "Dough," but what's really stuck with you is a smart message about greed, or a clever reference to a book or a piece of art. That's why so many fans go back and rewatch old episodes. With each rewatch, something new pops up. Maybe you notice a billboard gag you missed as a kid. Maybe you finally catch the library reference your English teacher mentioned in passing. Or maybe you realize that an episode you thought was just goofy actually predicted a trend that's happening now. The show rewards attention in a way few others do. It's like Springfield is a puzzle box, and the more you twist it, the more secrets it reveals. So the next time you sit down to watch, don't just watch for the laughs, though there will be plenty. Watch for the hidden patterns. Watch for the background signs, the throwaway lines, the subtle nods to history, literature, and politics. Watch with the awareness that you're not just consuming a cartoon, but a cultural artifact that's been quietly mapping out our world for decades. And maybe after all of this, you'll agree that The Simpsons deserves to be seen not just as a sitcom, but as one of the greatest cultural commentaries ever created. It predicted the future not because it had a crystal ball, but because it had the courage to look closely at the present. It critiqued society not with lectures, but with laughter, and it left us with a treasure trove of hidden messages waiting to be discovered by anyone willing to pay attention. Now here's the fun part. What hidden gems have you noticed? Was it a background gag that stuck in your memory? A prediction that still blows your mind? Or maybe a literary reference that made you do a double take?